We made it all the way through 256 games in the can. We thought it might never happen, but we've got through them all. We now know the 14 teams that are left in the running and riding for the Super Bowl. Let's get into it. Week 17 review coming up right now.
Hey, we're rolling. We drive all game long. Stay tuned, man. We got something special for y'all today.
You're listening to the Full 10 Yards Podcast.
To the 10, right to the 5, scooting in for the score. Touchdown!
Yes, here we are indeed, ladies and gents. Like I said, we made it all the way through 256 regular season games. We've had a few hiccups along the way, but we have got there nevertheless. Let's welcome the boys into the huddle. For those of you watching along, you will see a new man in the huddle. We'll get to him shortly, but let's welcome in the regular cast and crew. Timothy, how are we this evening, my friend?
Yeah, very well. Looking forward. I've quite enjoyed especially the late slate games, the 9 o'clock window, as it were. I'm looking forward to breaking it all down. Quite a lot of decent action.
There was indeed, mate. It was a good weekend of action. I think a few games surprised people, a few teams with not a lot to play for, and some high-scoring affairs. So, yeah, we'll break it all down shortly. In the company, as usual, of course, with Mr. Retro himself. Lawrence, how are you, buddy?
Oh, I just wanted to report I'm very, very glad that Doug Peterson got that brown paper bag that I put in the post sometime in November. So thanks, Doug, for opening my Christmas parcel a bit late.
Very kind of you, my friend, very kind of you. And the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed we're joined by a resident writer and Eagles fan. I mean, let's face it, after what happened last night, we just had to get an Eagles fan on to explain the situation, didn't we? But making his podcast debut, Steve, welcome in, mate. How are you doing, buddy?
Thank you very much. Yeah, doing well, thanks, mate. Doing well, thanks, chaps. Good to be on. I was going to make my debut a few weeks ago when Carson Wentz got dropped. I thought I'd leave it till apparently the Eagles did something even more newsworthy. So, yeah, come on and give some context from an Eagles point of view to apparently the most dramatic thing that's happened this season. But here we go.
Oh, there we go, mate. We will get on to it straight away. Just before we do that, big shout out to regular man in the huddle, Kieran, not feeling too well over in the States. Get well soon, buddy. Hopefully we'll get you back next week to review Super Wildcard Weekend. But of course, ahead of Wildcard Weekend, we had to find out who was going to be in the field. And let's start then, fellas, with the final game of the regular season. The Sunday Night Football affair. We know that obviously the Giants and the Cowboys played out a game earlier on in the afternoon, which the Giants ended up winning. Andy Dalton found his playoff form, didn't he, Tim? Put an absolute stinker out for the Cowboys as the Giants took care of business. So all that the Giants needed was a Philadelphia win. And Steve, talk us through it, because obviously Washington get the win, but it was slightly more controversial for certain reasons.
Yeah, depending on which side of the fence you fall on, controversial is probably the right word for it. I think the first thing I'd say is that if this isn't Sunday Night Football, nobody cares. Nobody cares about this result if it isn't Sunday Night Football. It's because it is a national audience and because it is played at what is the primetime slot over in the States. That's why everyone gets to see this. And obviously the albeit bad press that the NFC East has got this year with no team getting above 500. Everyone wants to see how the NFC East plays out. And so we go into Sunday Night Football with Washington having a simple win and in scenario, and Philadelphia with nothing left to play for, with quarterback controversies, with questions all over the roster, with questions in the front office, with questions at head coach. And what played out was, in my opinion, nothing that surprised me. I expected this. I don't know how most people didn't expect this. When you look back over some of the things that happened during the week, Doug Peterson said last week that he was going to give Nate Sudfeld snaps. He said it, and then when he did it, everyone was shocked. Jalen Hurts wasn't exactly having the game of his life. When he was hooked, he was 7 for 20, 72 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. So he was hardly setting the world on fire, was he? So, and then if you look at the injury report on Friday, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox, Dallas Goedert, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, Jordan Mailata, Richard Rodgers, Miles Sanders, Quez Watkins, all out of the game. Like, this was coming. This was coming since Thursday. How were people shocked when it got to Sunday night and this happened? I personally, it's not nice. It's not nice to have the whole national audience saying that you've upset the NFL and you've upset the game and you should go out and win and you should win every single game. And even Jason Kelsey has been quoted saying that every single game in the NFL should be about winning. I get that. I understand it. But it's a dead rubber. The Eagles had nothing left to play for apart from a better draft pick. And who knows? That number 6 might be Jamar Chase. And who knows what that number 9 would be if it's Howie Roseman picking, God knows who we're going to get. But yeah, I'm not as outraged as most people is. I'm sure that Lawrence. I'd be interested to get Washington fans' opinion on it and how it played out. You must be thrilled because at the end of the day, the Washington are in the playoffs.
To me, it was just a bit of a dirty victory, really. Yeah. What upsetted me the most is, as you just said, the list of people that weren't playing. Fletcher Cox out. When I saw Fletcher Cox was out, that was my biggest kind of cheer went up. It wasn't the fact that Alex Smith was playing, that Antonio Gibson is kind of coming back from his turf toe injury, Terry McLaurin was coming back. It was the fact that Fletcher Cox wasn't playing. That to me, I thought, okay, well, Alex Smith's going to have a bit of time in the pocket. And no, he didn't have any time in the pocket. I mean, coming back from his kind of, another leg injury, not the severe one that he's come back for, that he's going to win comeback player of the year for, but coming back from that kind of earlier injury from a couple of weeks ago, he had absolutely no mobility at all. And with a bunch of no names and no disrespect, the Eagles pass rush kept getting to Alex Smith. I mean, who are the people that got sacks? They're just people I'm not very familiar with. Was it Alex Singleton?
Yeah, Alex Singleton, a linebacker, got one. Everyone but Brandon Graham, who needed 2 more to get to 10. But yeah, you're right. The pass rush didn't seem to be suffer from the lack of Fletcher Cox, and what Fletcher Cox adds is a run defense, and him in stops the run. That's what he does. It's what he's the best at, and yeah, even then, you didn't even seem to benefit from that either. I mean, is there many injuries on the O-line? I couldn't believe how many times he gave the ball away.
I think the difficulty is, we don't play with any kind of fullback, so there's no blocking back in Washington. There hasn't been one for quite a while. Antonio Gibson wasn't back at 100% or anywhere near 100%. And Alex Smith, with absolutely zero mobility, had to rely on short pass. I mean, you look at Terry McLaurin's average; it was something ridiculous, like 7 yards a catch or something, and it was very poor. And the only decent performance was right at the end of the second half when they managed that touchdown drive to take the lead and then get that momentum right at the end of the second half, and that was the most important drive of the entire game to get the lead, and one that they somehow didn't manage to relinquish once they got that lead. I was nervous. I've seen the Eagles do bad things to Washington teams over the past decade, over the past couple of decades, and I was very, very, very nervous. And then suddenly when Nate Sudfeld came out, and ironically, it was the Redskins that, back when they were the Redskins, that actually drafted Nate Sudfeld. Yeah. So kind of I've seen a little bit of him, and I know he's a big human being. He's a big unit, but he's not a mobile unit.
No.
He's the polar opposite to Jalen Hurts. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? We're going to stand a chance now. And they generated, no offense. And even right at the end, it was just embarrassing. Just doing a little dump off pass at the end. I mean, for goodness sake, just launch one. You're only 6 points down. Launch one 50 yards in the air. At least go for it.
I have no idea, Lawrence, why you were worried at all. Because, like I say, as soon as that injury report came out on Friday, I even on the betting podcast, I said Washington -3 is the biggest lock of the year. Like, Philadelphia have absolutely no interest in winning that game. Like, I know we said before we came on the podcast that we don't often swear, but it's just top shithousery from the Eagles. Like, literally have no point, no interest in winning that game. It's like they're only going to get a better pick. Like, say, no matter who they pick at 6 wide receiver wise, they're going to pick the wrong one anyway if history's to repeat itself. But that's for the offseason. I literally have. as a Cowboys fan, we get to the Cowboys Giants game in a minute. Like, I'm glad we lost, and like I can't I can't say for 1 second that Eagles are a poor form or bad sportsmanship and all that, because I said 3-4 weeks ago that any teams in the NFC East should not be winning any games, because there's a difference of about 15 draft picks in each round of the NFL draft, and yes, you still got to select the right players. But yeah, I don't understand why Giants fans should have got on their high horse early in the week when Doug Peterson come out and said Sudfeld's getting snaps, because you know exactly from that moment what the result of that game is. But yeah. They're going to play, aren't they?
I think that Doug Peterson almost shot himself in the foot when word got out earlier in the week that it was going to be Jim Schwartz's last game as defensive coordinator, because the defense played out of their skin for Jim Schwartz. That's the best I've seen some of the Eagles defense play in a while, and considering some of the practice squad guys they had out there, like apart from Darius Slay, the cornerbacks there, I couldn't tell you the name of some of the guys who were playing a cornerback, but they were playing for him. You could tell it was their last game. So I'm not shocked at all. All these people, like watching some of the Giants Twitter last night, man. Like that's probably the most fight I've seen from the Giants offense all season on Twitter. Like what they were all like shocked, and it was like, what are you surprised? Like, surely win more than 6 games and then you might go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like no one can be mad. And actually, to be honest, for NFC rivals of Washington, it's probably not the worst that Washington made the playoffs, because of the 3 teams, they're probably the one that need the quarterback the most.
Absolutely.
So if them getting a higher pick probably would have been best to put them in the position to get a Justin Fields or a Zach Wilson, So yeah.
Yeah, just it's kind of strange winning a division and kind of going.
Yeah.
It's all finished now. We don't have to argue about it anymore. It's next season we can all argue again.
I'll make one final point, and it's not Washington related. The last 2 teams to have made the playoffs with 7 wins, both won their first round playoff matches.
Yep.
The Panthers and the Seahawks.
From Rivera Panthers.
And I was going to say, guess who managed the Panthers?
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. The ledge, Mr. Rivera. So, that it's there's just don't underestimate anybody, and as we've said all season long, any given Sunday. But I think it's gonna be the toughest task. Tom Brady and Chase Young. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun build up for the week.
I'm really intrigued to see that pass rush against Brady, though, because you can get to Brady. You can absolutely get to him. And if they can cause a fuss, and Alex Smith actually turns up to play this week, you never know.
You never know, fellas. But don't spoil Thursday's fun, because we'll be back on air Thursday looking at all their playoff games. Our job is to look at what's just gone on the weekend. And we'll gloss over it slightly, because, as you say, in the end, it turned out to be a dead rubber. Obviously, the 2 teams didn't know that when they lined up. The Giants do get a win over the Cowboys. Sloppy from Dallas, Tim, I think is probably the easiest way to describe it in this one.
Dog crap's another one, and playoff Andy Dalton came a week early. I don't know, awful, absolutely awful. I mean, that final drive, just on Dallas's final drive, it was such a good drive. It was just going to always end how it did. It was just too perfect a drive to go down and win it. And it was quite weird, the catch-22, because you do want to have a chance at the playoffs, even though I know, but obviously what I just said, there's literally no chance being in the playoffs. But.
Yeah. And even then, the Giants nearly fumbled it away with Wayne Gorman. That would have just summed up the NFC East in one play just to finish the game, wouldn't it? Run the clock out, got past the yardage marker, and fumbles the ball with absolutely nobody around him. Just a bizarre play. But like you say, the Giants. I mean, to be fair to the Giants, started 1-7, finish with a 5-3 run in the back half of the season. So some positives for them to take forward. But obviously the Washington football team have never, ever missed the playoffs in their existence. How about that? 100% record. Never, ever missed the playoffs. So there you go. So let's move on, fellas. Let's move on to the NFC West, which threatened throughout the season to be one of the most exciting divisions in football. I've got to be honest, I think it's really petered out over the last month. And some of these teams have been really, really disappointing. No more so, it's got to be said, than the Arizona Cardinals, who, for all of their star power and for all of the early season hype around Kyler Murray, and even talk about him potentially being sort of considered as a bit of an outsider in the MVP race, Obviously, things happened in this game which meant we didn't see an awful lot of Kyler Murray. But let's be honest, fellas, this was a real tough watch, wasn't it, Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's a kind of gloss that's been taken off the NFC West, and it appears a little bit forgotten, really, after the what the Packers and the Saints have done in recent weeks, and they're sitting there in the number 3 seed. They're hosting a game, but it's a bit of a weird division. I mean, to be honest, when Sky decided to kind of drag us through the worst, I think it was actually the worst 6 p.m. game. Oh, sorry, the worst 9 p.m. game of the season. 2 quarterbacks that nobody had an absolute clue about prior to this week, and they slugs it out in an absolutely dire game where, as you say, an early ankle injury to Kyler Murray killed it as any sort of spectacle. The Rams gave John Wolford his first start at quarterback. This is a guy who was a free agent pickup by the Jets in 2018, who was under 50% in completion rate in his preseason performance for the Jets. He then got drafted again in 2019 by the Arizona Hotshots of the AAF, and he won a couple of Offensive Player of the Week performances for that team that went 5-3 before the league collapsed. And then the Rams signed him, released him, and then put him on their practice squad. So he's been sitting on the practice squad for about a year. And I've got in Stats Life, I've got some fun things about John Wolford coming up, so I'll save those for later. And then for the Cardinals, they ended up throwing in Chris Steveler. Is that how you pronounce it? Steveler?
No one had any clue who he was.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets even more bizarre. Steveler played in college for South Dakota. He was undrafted in 2018 and was signed by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as a free agent in the CFL. He started games last season in the CFL as an injury replacement, and he even had a cameo in Winnipeg's Grey Cup win in 2019, and he tossed a second quarter touchdown and actually finished with a stat line of 3 for 3 in the game. But he wasn't the starter. Poor old Steveler in his full NFL kind of debut, he did have a couple of snaps earlier on in the season. He did have a 3-yard run before this, so it wasn't his first NFL outing. He ended up 11 of 16, 105 yards, 1 touchdown, very, very early on, 1 interception, 3 runs for 12 yards. But the Rams absolutely did what they've been doing all season, and for the 7th time this year, they held an opponent to under 20 points. So we've just got to give a lot of respect to that Rams defense. Whilst the offense has been spluttering, to say the least, that defense has been playing solid week in, week out football with some occasional strange performances, as in the Jets. But in the main, they've been doing a stellar job. As I said, Steve had managed an early touchdown, but that was it. The Rams went and scored 18 unanswered, with their defense ending up scoring 8 points and their kicker, Matt Gay, scoring 10. So in terms of offensive skill positions, they managed 0 points. No points from wide receivers, tight ends, running backs or quarterbacks. The highlight of the game was a Troy Hill 84-yard interception return at the end of the second quarter, which essentially wrapped the game up. Don't really want to talk more about it because it was a horrendous watch.
You've done well to get a good 5 minutes out of that. To be
yeah. It's only because it's fun looking up where the hell these quarterbacks have come from. It's fascinating looking into the backstories of these kind of rather random passes. So that the Rams defense wrapped up the game. And talking about kind of wrapping up games, the Seahawks. And I think, we haven't really talked a lot about the Seahawks in the last month. And perhaps they're the quietest team to be on a 4-game win streak at the moment. I don't even know if anyone realizes that. And it kind of took me back a little bit, because I thought since they lost that game to the Giants and they were 8-4, you were kind of starting to worry that we were talking about in October, November that, letting Russ cook and potential MVP award and all of this. And then the gloss completely came off of that as a kind of philosophy. And then that loss to the Giants to put them at 8-4, you're thinking, the Seahawks, are they actually going to collapse? But they managed to pull four wins off in a row, seal the NFC West, and end with a respectable 12-4 record. And anybody who gets 12 wins in what has been the strangest season ever, you've got to give them some respect. It's a game that they didn't actually need to win, but they did come back from a 10-point fourth quarter deficit to score 3 touchdowns in just over 9 minutes to get a big enough lead to win. First 3 quarters were a festival of field goals. Tristan Vizcaino, the volcano, is that a new nickname?
That's plural for volcanoes.
He had 3 field goals. Vizcaino, he bounced around because I'd not heard of him before either. He bounced around the Bengals and the Cowboys practice squads over the past season or so. And just one little side note on Vizcaino, he wore number 7. Now, who was the last 49er to wear number 7?
Cap.
Exactly, Mr. Colin Kaepernick. So it's a strange number to inherit on your debut, the 49ers number 7. Just thought that was a bit of weirdness with the numbers there. Big Russ, who tossed 2 touchdowns to Tyler Lockett in the fourth quarter to kind of get the lead, ended up the season with 4,212 yards and 40 touchdowns, which is tied second for the league. He also had 13 picks, which is probably the most he's had for a little while. And he also broke 500 on the ground. So good to see him using some of his wheels. And as a result of the Cardinals' loss, the Seahawks now host the Rams for a second time, and the winner going into the final 8. Both teams have won at home against each other in really kind of low-scoring affairs. And the bad news for Big Russ is that in those 2 games against the Rams, he's actually been sacked 11 times. The Rams have got to him 11 times in 2 games. So we'll save the bigger preview, but I just thought that was an interesting sub-note in terms of the dominance of the Rams defense.
Yeah, if the Rams are going to do anything in the postseason, it's obviously going to be the defense that's going to follow them. That offense has gone and, it's hidden up its own backside, hasn't it? Let's be honest, the last month. So they certainly need to find themselves. No such trouble for the offense of the Green Bay Packers, Tim. Aaron Rodgers looked completely dialed in this one. Kieran says that we're going to get a week that he doesn't seem to care. We haven't found it yet. And we're now into the playoffs. Obviously, the NFC will go through Lambeau. And obviously, in the dead rubber, wasn't a dead rubber for Justin Jefferson. I'm sure you're going to touch on him. Lions and Vikings sharing a shootout.
Yeah, Green Bay. The Chicago Bears kept it close for the first half, I suppose, but Green Bay always felt in control of this one. Big turning point in this one was the Cole Kmet turnover in the middle of the second quarter, which turned into a Daphne touchdown. I'll spare you all the Scooby-Doo references, Lawrence. Scrappy and Shaggy and all the rest of it. Anyway, but yeah, Adrian Amos latest interception sealed the deal. Cherry on top for the Packers, of course, yet another Devonta Adams touchdown. It was at 18 touchdowns on the season for him. Obviously missed 2 games as well this season, so he'll be slightly annoyed that he wasn't able to surpass his what was it for? No, it was 12 receiving yards off of his most in the season, so he'd probably be a bit annoyed that he didn't surpass that. But yeah, missing 2 games, obviously he would have done that if he was able to go in either of those. Yeah, but 18 touchdowns on the season, not able to join the 20 TD club. Now been selected to his 4th straight Pro Bowl. It's just a joy to watch. When you watch wide receivers, I know you've got your Julios, and I know you've got, everyone's got their guys, but watching Devonta Adams just run routes and get open is just beautiful. Especially when Aaron Rodgers is throwing in the ball as well. Fellow Pro Bowler Aaron Jones, his running back team buddy. He's obviously been selected to his first Pro Bowl as well. Has his most rushing yards on the year. 42 in this game, so he didn't actually get too much going, but he was able to surpass his previous career season best. But he's a free agent by all accounts. But yeah, Green Bay, like I say, they knew kind of what was there for them. It probably helped them that they kind of had something to play for, in a sense that they still had the 1 seed to lock up. It'd be interesting to see what kind of performance they put in if Chicago needed to win and they didn't, obviously being at Soldier Field. But yeah, the other two battling out in the dead rubber, like you mentioned, Sean, Minnesota and Detroit actually put up a decent game. It's amazing what happens when you don't have anything to play for and you can just kind of let it all go. I know Stafford, you can be on either side of the fence whether or not he should have suited up in this one, but he obviously wants to gut it out, and who knows if he will be there next season. I obviously think that he should be traded away for a pick, but whether that materializes, we will wait and see. But yeah, he had a good game. So did Marvin Jones, had one of his best games of the season. Obviously, Golladay's not been there for the majority with it. It was a hip injury as well. So I think he's also potentially a free agent next season. It's been interesting to see who they retain and whether or not they break it all down. But like you mentioned, Sean, for the Vikings, it was a huge day for Mattison, but a huge season for Justin Jefferson. Joins a couple of players on seven games with 100+ receiving yards. Bill Gorman of the Oilers, I think it was, I remember seeing, had 9. But yeah, 1,400 receiving yards for him in his rookie season. Very, very. He's taken to the NFL like a duck to water. So looking forward to seeing him come back next year as well. So. Yeah, it was a fun game. I say not much riding on it, and if you want to go watch the highlights, this highlights package was probably a bit longer than probably the Dallas New York Giants one. But I think that's the only compliment I can give the game, and the only reason why you would go back and watch it, perhaps.
Yeah, good day for Marvin Jones as well on the other side, rolling back the years. Two sides that obviously disappointed throughout the course of the season, Vikings and Lions, where they've got plenty of building blocks in place. Obviously, like you say, the Lions will be an interesting one to keep an eye on in the off-season. I love the look that Aaron Rodgers gave Marquez Vantez Scoutling on the first incompletion of the day, which should have been another sort of 50, 60-yard touchdown bomb from Aaron Rodgers. He just looked absolutely phenomenal, didn't he? And it's going to be tough for anyone to knock off Green Bay in the NFC, but potentially it might be the Saints. They locked up the number 2 seed. Routine victory in this one over the Carolina Panthers, 33-7. Obviously, the biggest story for New Orleans was the fact that the entire running back room was out due to COVID-19 issues, in similar scenario to what I said about the Browns in the game against the Jets the week before. We'll touch on it Thursday because it might become reality come Thursday. COVID is going to have an impact on a playoff game, and a big impact. The Saints will be glad that this happened in the week that it did, and Ty Montgomery stepped out of semi-retirement after not doing an awful lot over the last 12 months to find himself as a 100-yard rusher on the day. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also locked up the 5 seed. That's all that they had left to confirm, and they did so in style. 44 points on the board. That offense has really all of a sudden found its gear. The Falcons did get it back close at one stage, but then the Bucs pulled away again. Just the 399 yards for Tom Brady. I can't believe, fellas, looking back, we questioned at the start of the season whether a move away from New England, whether the fact that he was 43, could he still do it, all the rest of it. Lawrence mentioned earlier about Russ tied for the second in the league with 40 TDs. He's tied, of course, with TB12. Phenomenal season for Tom Brady. I don't think there's any sign he's going to hang it up this off-season either, unless the Bucs go all the way. But I've said this before, when he's won his Super Bowls with New England, go out on top, and he's just a different animal altogether, isn't he? But an absolutely phenomenal season, all things considered, for Tom Brady and the Bucs. So, fellas, we now have our 7 in the NFC. We, of course, have got the Packers with the bye, the Saints, the Seahawks, the Washington football team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the LA Rams, and the Chicago Bears. Very quickly, who comes out of the NFC? Tim?
Packers.
Lawrence?
Not sure yet. I'm leaning more with the Saints.
And Steve?
It's just so difficult not to say the Packers, especially how that defense is performing now. Like J.R. Alexander and the safety, I forget his name as well.
Savage.
That's it. Yeah. That defense is, when you've got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, having that defense around him to on the other side of the ball to get turnovers. It's just difficult to look anywhere other than Green Bay, especially as it's going through Lambeau as well.
Yeah, I think the Lambeau thing could be huge. I went Saints pre-season, so I'll stick on that horse that I have saddled. But Green Bay is going to be a tough nut to crack. That is the end of the competition in terms of the NFC. And another competition that came to a close this weekend was our Pick'em competition that we have been running all throughout the season. Massive congratulations to the man that has seemingly been in the lead from week number 1, and as despite everybody's best efforts, nobody could quite catch him and overtake him. So congratulations to David too. He takes the season prize, and I know he's already been keenly in contact with us on the on the Twitter to claim his prize, and we will obviously get that sorted. But we did say all throughout the season, if anybody got 100% in any given week, we would give away some merchandise. 17 weeks later, fellas, we got close. I had a 15. A few of us have had a 15 out of 16, but nobody ever quite cracked the full complement. So, because we're true to our word and we like giving stuff away, and it's all about the brand. Tim is modelling a full 10 yards t-shirt there for you, ladies and gents. What we decided to do was anybody that played along in week 17, we put you all into a random 100-yard dash. And don't worry, you haven't got to get off your couch and start running up and down or anything crazy like that. But we've got all of your names randomly into the computer generator. And before we hit the record button on the podcast this evening, we hit the record button on the 100-yard dash. So we will stick it up on the screen. I will advise you that it's not exactly the clearest to see, unfortunately, in the format that we have done. So I do apologise for that. I will try and do my best John Motson as we go through this. But if, Tim, you want to hit the 40-yard dash, the 12 people that are in the running are the 12 of you that beat mine and Tim's score of 11 this week. So we have Torino, we have Enkil before Zod, LOL 3000, and a whole heap of others. And there are all of the men running across the field. You can see there's a couple that have made a breakaway, but can they get across the end zone line before anybody else catches them up?
It's like going to. There's one winner.
We have a winner. We have a second. And there's me at the back. Look, that's true to life, fellas. That's me. That's me and Lawrence at the back. The big fellas bringing up the rear.
Combined measurements.
We will get there eventually. And apologies, you can't really see the names, but trust me, the results will load up there. And there you go. There are the top 12 that beat myself and Tim. There were technically 14 that beat me and Tim, but David, too, you were one of them. And you've already won one prize, so I weren't entering you again. And the other person. And the other person that beat myself and Tim was actually Sean Tyler, who already works at the full 10 yards, so I'm sure he doesn't want yet another T-shirt. So apologies, Sean, we took you out the running as well. But there's your top 12 that beat me and Tim this week. And the two winners are Lady Rach and LOL 3000. So if you can get in touch with us via either Twitter or via myself or Tim, whichever way you want to, claim your prize before the weekend, and we will sort that out. Like I say, fingers crossed, we will have some more winners of our next competition, which we will touch on a little bit later after we've reviewed the AFC.
Whilst watching that, did anyone remember when you go to the pier and you play the two penny horse game? Like you always bet on the white one that's like 20-1 or something stupid. I wanted to put me 2p in the.
Right, fellas, let's get into the AFC side of things then. And Steve, we'll come back to yourself because the conference really that was the unfortunate conference to have two dead rubbers really on the weekend was, of course, the AFC West, but produced a couple of entertaining games in terms of the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, week 17 always throws up some strange results and some big scoring games because some teams have got nothing to play for, some teams have got everything to play for, and it's also a chance for some guys to go out there who are generally backups or wouldn't either otherwise get a shot and show that they belong on that roster the next year. So starting with Vegas at Denver, I thought Drew Locke had quite a good game. He seems to be coming into his own a little bit. Is he the answer for Denver? I don't know, but he seems to be certainly making a push. He 25 for 41 with 339 yards, 2 touchdowns and no picks as well. He had a rating of over 103. So I thought he looked quite good. If they can surround him with a few more options, he certainly could be the answer for Denver. And I think they just let go of their GM literally minutes before we went live. I think they've just let go of their GM, so that could also be interesting as to who's going to fill that space in Denver. Where has Jerry Jeudy been all season? He had a bit of a breakout game. He had that massive 92-yard bomb in the fourth to take the lead. He had 140 yards from 5 receptions, obviously boosted by that one. Interestingly, touching on what Tim was saying about Justin Jefferson, it was interesting how much coverage the main 3 receivers from last year's draft got going into the draft, and how little they've all done. And I've thought of that about Jeudy, about CeeDee Lamb. And they've just done very, very little. And so it was good to see Jeudy have what looked like a bit of a breakout game. Shame it's coming week 17. On the other side of the ball, Darren Waller once again having another terrific game, solidifying himself as the best tight end in the league that isn't named Kelsey or Kittle. He had 9 catches for 117 yards, a touchdown, and a game-winning 2-point conversion as well. I like the decision. I like the balls from John Gruden to go for that in the fourth. Obviously, nothing on the line. You try things, and it worked, and they won the game by a point. So big preps to that. I love it when teams go for it on a 2-point rather than just take it to overtime. No one wants a tie. No one likes ties. John Gruden, he's on his 3rd year of his 10-year deal. Diverting a bit from the game itself, was he a good hire? I'm still not convinced. 10-year deal. They're 8-8. They missed the playoffs again. Is there progress in Las Vegas? I know they've just built that enormous stadium, and they're moving over there next year. This year, hopefully with fans next year. 10-year deal always seemed a bit strange, but some people think he's an offensive wizard. So I guess we'll remain to see. I guess there's still questions over Derek Carr as well, and whether or not he's the answer moving forward for Vegas. Moving on to the other game, the Chargers at Kansas City. Obviously, Kansas City was resting all of their starters. Pat Mahomes didn't play. Tyreek Hill didn't play. Most of their front runners were out. Which brought in Chad Henne, who obviously was a Dolphins player for the later part of the last decade. He actually looked pretty good, which I guess probably, I don't know if that's more of a compliment to him or if that's more of a compliment to the Kansas City offense. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 111.2 rating. So he actually looked pretty good. On the other side of the ball, Justin Herbert, obviously everyone's waxed lyrical about Herbert this season. He just added more to his stock. And interesting stat about him is that with his touchdown pass to Donald Parham Jr. in the first quarter, Herbert notched 380 pass completions, which set a new record for the most pass completions by a rookie in a single season. Herbert broke Carson Wentz's record of 379 set in 2016. He finished with 396, which is the new benchmark. So 396 completions on a season for a rookie quarterback, pushing on that 400 door is hella impressive for a rookie. And obviously they've just fired Anthony Lynn, head coach. That's got to be a really, really intriguing opening at head coach down in LA. They've got the quarterback of the future for the next 10 years. They've got a really intriguing defense. If they can make the right hire, then surely the Chargers have got to be an interesting destination for any potential head coaching candidate. And I also thought one of these games might make it to the highest scoring of 2020. And then I remembered the Browns-Ravens from a few weeks ago when it was 47-42, and neither of these games got close to that. Overall, a couple of entertaining games. Sometimes the ones that there's nothing to play for sometimes are the most entertaining ones. But certainly some interesting things to think about going into the off-season for most of those teams as well.
Yeah, most definitely, mate. It's amazing there wasn't quite as much furore about the Chiefs playing Chad Henne as there was about the Eagles bringing in Nate Sudfeld. But there you go. We'll move on, fellas. We'll move on. Let's talk about the team that ultimately ended up slipping out of the playoffs in terms of the Miami Dolphins, Lawrence. We'll also touch on the other game in that division, which saw potentially a farewell for Cam Newton. I think that's been fairly widely reported. Eventually, a farewell for Adam Gase as well, long overdue. But obviously, bigger picture and bigger story in that division, of course, is the Dolphins falling at the last. They've been a great story all season long, but unfortunately, when needed, I mean, obviously running into the Red Hot Bills was never going to be easy. But Tua just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and before we start, can we just recap to a week ago and my friend Sean, because obviously we're bonding here, Midlands buddies here. Who called Miami to be the team that missed out, and who called the Browns to miss out? Let's just remember.
Yeah, I believe you had faith, my friend. I believe you had faith.
There we go. So yeah, as you say, as the Bills become the lone playoff entrants from the AFC East, there was some real mixed fortunes for the teams that didn't have hairy wild animals on their helmets. Now we know the Dolphins have got a wild animal, but it's definitely not hairy. So having gone down 14-7 to and we're talking about teams on a hot streak, the volcanically hot New York Jets, where they were leading 14-7 against the Patriots, thinking, can we end the season on a 3-game win streak and just make Bill Belichick feel absolutely miserable for the next 9 months, which would have probably made the other 31 teams very happy, but no, they didn't manage to do it. Cam Newton catches a touchdown pass, a little bit of a Philly special there, which was pretty good. And then he threw 2 more touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and he actually managed those 3 touchdowns. I clocked it. It was 16 plays. It took Cam Newton to catch a touchdown and throw 2 touchdowns. So pretty remarkable little cameo at the end for Cam, who has been, pretty miserable for this season. As I've said before, this season has exposed Cam as a very, very average, conventional quarterback, devastatingly effective red zone runner. But you can't go through a season and just expect your quarterback to run for 16 touchdowns and win, 10, 11 games. It's just not going to happen. Patriots are going to be missing the playoffs as we've talked about him, their former franchise quarterback faces a wild card trip from the sunshine to the sogginess of Landover, Maryland. The Jets, who had their shock week 15 and 16 wins against the Rams and the Browns, mean they'll pick second now in this year's draft. And what's a little interesting note here, so let's not forget they've also got the Seahawks first. So they're going to hope that Big Russ burns his cakes very early in the playoffs. So they have a second decent first-round pick. For the Dolphins, I think they became one of the biggest victims of COVID. Obviously, we've had the Broncos reduced to a practice squad receiver being a quarterback. You've had the Browns, who've had, they had, devastating losses to a unit and their receiving unit. And then the Dolphins, they lose the bearded wizard, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he was unable to wave his astute magic wand for one last time in the 2020 regular season, as the Bills kept their starters. And we can kind of argue how this went. Arguably kept them on the field for longer than they needed to be. You would have thought they would have pulled Josh Allen a little bit earlier. And don't forget, if Josh Allen would have taken some sort of freak hit and he would have still been on the field, that could have been, an absolutely devastating loss for the Bills. As it is, Josh Allen remains kind of there throughout the game. And then Matt Barkley came on at the end for another little Week 17 cameo. It's all about the cameos in Week 17, I think. And then in the end, the Bills win by 30. It's an absolute thrashing. And then, couple of big notes here. In the space of 5 minutes and 42 seconds in the second quarter, Bills wide receiver, and not even, first, second, or third receiver, fourth or fifth receiver, Isaiah McKenzie scored 3 touchdowns in under 6 minutes, 2 from Josh Allen and 1 absolutely stunning punt return. And it's the first Bills player to take a punt back to the end zone since 2014. So big shout out to Isaiah McKenzie, and anyone who had him on DFS, I'm sure they were laughing by the end of Sunday. Josh Allen himself ends the season with 4,544 yards, new Bills record, 37 touchdowns and 10 picks, along with 421 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. So 45 total touchdowns. Absolute beast of a season. I've got a sneaky feeling he's just going to lose out to Aaron Rodgers in terms of the MVP race, but he has come darn close to winning the honour. And if he does and becomes the third consecutive AFC quarterback to lift that title, there won't be any complaints from me. Just wanted to give a little shout out as well to Antonio Williams, the rookie running back for the Bills. 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. This was an undrafted free agent who's been on the practice squad from North Carolina, had his debut in week 17 and pulls off quite a decent stat line. So, you know, that Bills rushing game, that's really it's kind of their Achilles heel. So Antonio Williams maybe pulls off a Timmy Smith. Now, does any of you guys know who Timmy Smith is?
Well, you're showing your age here, mate.
Yeah. So back in the 1987 season, when Washington went on to win Super Bowl 22, they started a guy called Timmy Smith. He made his official first start in the Super Bowl and ran for over 200 yards in the Super Bowl. Got to give a little bit of retro love here. So you just never know. Antonio Williams might be on some sort of hot streak. So he's you can see that he could do some damage in the playoffs, and people haven't got any game tape on him apart from week 17. So let's just see. Keep an eye out for Antonio Williams. And then just a kind of sad note to reflect on the Dolphins, who obviously were the lucky losers of that playoff place, that one remaining playoff place, to 6-3 in his rookie season, 1,814 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks, and the 5 picks makes him look kind of average, but 3 of those came in that week 17 loss. So he'd only thrown 2 picks in the previous 8 games, which was pretty respectable for a rookie. 3.6 yards a rush and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Nothing remarkable there. Having made his first start in week 8. So it's going to be a strange one in Miami because they haven't got that 100% confidence in Tua, but I think they are going to be building around him for 2021.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma that they've got there, because I know you said 6-3. I think we all know realistically, if it wasn't for a bit of Fitzmagic off the bench, it would be more like 3-6. And you obviously mentioned about the Dolphins and the COVID issues. I mean, to be fair, they shouldn't have to be relying on a backup quarterback. It's obviously been a great story all year in terms of how quickly they have turned it around from seemingly tanking a year ago. Obviously powered by a superstar defense. Shout out again to Xavier Howard, who got another interception this weekend in an all-pro season. Absolutely phenomenal. Is that 10 or is that just a good pair of hands?
That's 10. That's double. It's double. I love it. Yeah. Very good pair of hands.
Yeah. So yeah, an absolutely brilliant season from him. And look, the Dolphins are going to be back. Obviously, the interesting thing, and we'll pivot slightly off schedule here, fellas, it kind of sort of flows here, is they are slightly the beneficiaries of some of the other results, because the Houston Texans losing to the Tennessee Titans actually mean that the Dolphins will be picking all the way up at number 3. So there is the potential that one of the top 2 quarterbacks could still be on the board, and then it will be a real dilemma. Yeah.
I wonder if Bill O'Brien would have lit that pick on fire had he known it would have been a 3rd.
It could potentially be another King's ransom that the Dolphins may end up getting. Who knows? They're obviously going to be in a great position, and fair play to them for obviously getting the trades done when they did. But like I said, let's get on to the game that I just mentioned there. The Tennessee Titans confirmed in the playoffs before kickoff because of that Dolphins result, but they obviously had the division on the line, and as probably expected, I had this as the shootout of the week before a ball was thrown, and it ended up that way, didn't it? 41-38, the final score. King Henry, 2,000 plus on the ground. Absolutely phenomenal season for Derrick Henry. 250 on the ground in this one. Ryan Tannehill. That play is no longer a secret, Lawrence, but nobody can still stop it. Another 2 rushing touchdowns for Ryan Tannehill. whenever he needs to throw it.
For Christ's sake, I'm a Brit who's never coached professionally in my life. Put a bloody spy on Ryan Tannehill. Christ's sake.
We'll call that the Lawrence special that
How
day.
many more times is he going to pull this off this season? Jesus. You can imagine me. Every time he does it, I'm steaming mad. Yeah, honestly.
I could just imagine you kicking things and screaming at your TV. But when he needed to throw it deep, of course, with a few seconds remaining on the clock.
Oh, my God. That completion.
Only the Houston Texans could tie it up with 18 seconds left and then give up a 45, 50-yard bomb from Tannehill to AJ Brown.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Absolutely stunning. And
it was a wonderful catch as well. A wonderful catch.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And look, the Titans, we've said this now for a few weeks now, their defense is going to give up an absolute shed load of points, but that offense can run with anybody. So whatever game the Titans are involved in, sign me up to watch it. It's going to be entertaining. We'll obviously get onto the full sort of playoff schedule for the AFC shortly once we've gone through all the games. But so the Titans took care of the divisional crown. The other beneficiaries, of course, of the Miami loss were the Indianapolis Colts, who needed one of the teams in position at the start of play to lose. Obviously, the Dolphins kicking off at 6. The Colts knew at kickoff time that they had a then very simple scenario of win and in. And they eventually got the job done. It seemed like they were going to absolutely run away with it. A 20-0 lead over the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had obviously gone on a 14-game losing streak after defeating the Colts, ironically enough, in week 1. And then the Jags got everybody a little bit excited from a Miami perspective. They got it back to 20 points to 14 before the Colts eventually ended up pulling away again. Bigger question for me in this one, fellas, and we'll only very briefly touch on it because, as I keep alluding to, we are going to preview things moving forward on Thursday. I'm getting a little bit fed up as a neutral watching the situation behind centre for the Indianapolis Colts. It seems as though somebody different is taking the snap every other play, whether it's the running back, he's having it direct, whether Brissett's in there, whether Rivers is in there. It doesn't seem to be working either. That's the thing that is bugging me. They seemingly get a lead and then they start experimenting with all kinds of stuff that is doing nothing other than completely ruining the flow of what had been working for them up to that point. If the Colts are going to do any damage in the playoffs, and that defense is good enough to give anybody a game, they've proven that throughout the course of the season, surely they've got to figure things out there, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Brissett is not Taysom Hill. Jacoby Brissett is not a guy who's going to kind of do everything, play a bit of special teams, catch a few passes, do some lead blocking. That's not his thing. So yeah, I'm totally with you, Sean, that mixing Brissett into things and kind of putting him in as this goal line back, no need. Jonathan Taylor has been a beast, and he's come on the second half of the season. He's now rushed for over 1,100 yards as a rookie, and I think it's 10 touchdowns. So he's had a remarkable kind of resurgence. And as Philip Rivers, who normally or has been for many, many years with the Chargers, kind of faded as it came towards the end of the season, we're actually going to see Philip Rivers in the postseason, and it's thanks to Jonathan Taylor, and it's thanks to that Colts offensive line, which is a pretty stunning offensive line. Just one thing to say, I'm just seeing some of the notes here. Just a note here from Rachel Kimber, who is ridiculously pleased to win a T-shirt. So there you go. That's some great pride there. So well done, Rachel, and thank you for listening and watching the podcast live as well. We really appreciate your support.
Indeed, mate. It's the T-shirt that everybody wants. I should really wear my own one week for this instead of keep wearing this jersey. But to be fair, Tim, it's took me 54 minutes of being on the air, and I haven't mentioned it once, but we're at that point of the show, aren't we? 18 years of hurt is finally over.
Well, they've even won the World Cup, have they?
I'll tell you what, mate. It felt like we'd won the World Cup last night on the ourselves. I'll tell you what, fellas. I'm even going to let you in on a little secret here. I even shed a little tear last night.
Oh,
Bless
I'll
him.
tell you what. I honestly sat there, and after 18 years of absolute dross and 0-16 and 1-15 and a new head coach every year, and then seeing this team perform so well all year, I thought it was all going to be ruined because of COVID. Even though it was the backups, I knew yesterday wasn't going to be easy. It never is. It never, ever, ever is. And I have never celebrated a quarterback keeper for a 2-yard gain as much in my entire life. So we'll talk about the Ravens a little bit because they're obviously like the hottest team in the AFC right now. And let's face it, they're probably going to run away against most teams. But, I'm going to have my moment of glory, Tim. Go on, give it to me. Browns, Steelers, take it away.
Yeah, someone hand some tissues over to the Sean Blundell household. Yeah, you can hear the tears in his voice, can you? The Chubb 47-yard touchdown, obviously opening the scoring in this one. But it was nice to see, obviously, from a Browns perspective, that the wide receivers were able to join in for this one. Obviously, still have a few issues with guys on COVID, but yeah, like Sean said, with the Saints, obviously you want it in week 16. Well, you don't want it in week 16, 17, considering the position the Browns are in. But hopefully they'll all be okay to return for come playoff time and come next week. And anyway, but obviously this is a Steelers team resting most of their players. They still obviously had the wide receivers playing, but it was obviously Mason Rudolph under center and had some other understudies, some other starting players missing as well. But still, like I say, it's still a tough one. The Steelers, it still meant something to the Steelers. Obviously, the history, the rivalry, the previous game with the helmet gate and all that kind of crap. They obviously. The Steelers won. Steelers won the first matchup, so next week will be the tiebreaker, if you like. Obviously played at Heinz Field. Can the Browns bring some sauce? I love that. The turning point in this one was the MJ Stewart interception. Mason Rudolph cacking his pants, and then obviously turning that into a Jarvis Landry touchdown. That kind of. Obviously didn't make it comfortable because the Steelers obviously made a comeback late on with Mr. TikTok, as we like to call him, Juju Smith-Schuster with a touchdown, missing obviously the 2-point conversion to tie the game. And then Stephen Carlson must have had kittens on the onside kick doing his best Wayne Gorman impression, sitting on the ball. I'd love to be in the Blundell household for that one. But he obviously kept the ball and that was it. And the Browns, like I say, the Baker Mayfield run to the right, seals the deal. So yeah, obviously Browns going in. Obviously, traveling to Heinz Field next week. Be interesting to see kind of what. I'm not going to say it makes much of a difference with how the result. Obviously, they only won by 2, and obviously when you've still got the starters coming back. But I think the Steelers still played as well as. Gave them a good game, and they'll give them a good game next week. I still think the Browns probably have slightly too much for them, but it'd be interesting to see. Kind of like you like that face, don't you? It'd be interesting to see kind of the fight between the two teams, and depends if there's it wasn't really a dress rehearsal because of the Big Ben missing and all the rest of them, but Browns are in. As I say, if you're a Browns fan, that's all you care about. I'm sure you're obviously all you care about, and obviously you want to win next week, but just playing football, meaningful football in January, not something I will me or Steve will know this year, but well done to you, well done to the Browns. So it's nice to see a new team in the playoffs.
It's been a long time coming, mate. It certainly has. And to be fair, like I say, next week is a totally different game. It will be completely different. That was so important to get the monkey off the back yesterday. I could already hear the same old Browns chatter. Like you say, that onside kick, talk about heart in the mouth moment. You just, oh, my word. And like I said, I knew it was never, ever going to be easy yesterday. Knew it was never going to be easy. But, again, we'll review it all Thursday. The Browns have got a fighting chance next week. The Steelers, let's be honest, have played one decent quarter of football in the last 5 weeks. So...
Yep.
The Browns have got a chance.
Certainly agree. Oh yeah, obviously staying with the AFC North. Obviously, the Ravens joining the U boys and the Steelers in the playoffs. Absolutely steamrolled the Bengals, like I said they would on the betting podcast. Obviously, winning this one by 35 points. Ravens surpassed 400 yards rushing in this one, 404 yards on the ground. Jesus Christ, that's 4 lengths of the field on the ground and a bit of change as well. But it was done through the air to open up with Miles Boykin opening touchdown. Lamar Jackson tossing a couple of touchdowns to Marquise Brown as well. But J.K. Dobbins had 160 of those 404 yards, including the 72-yard scamper for the touchdown. Lamar Jackson obviously gets himself involved in the rushing game. Another 1,000 rushing season for him. Obviously, only player to do that back-to-back as a QB. Not even the great Mike Vick and all the other rushing guys can say that. And to be honest, I sat here for 5 minutes doing my notes, and I literally have nothing positive to say on the Bengals in this game. Trevion Williams had a decent run. T. Higgins didn't really play in this game. I think he had 1 target, but he's had a fine season. Obviously, probably taken over the mantle from AJ Green. And I looked at AJ Green's stats for this game, and I also looked at Brandon Allen's. My God Almighty, AJ Green possibly ban out in Cincinnati Bengals, 6 targets, 0 receptions. But then it's not surprising considering your quarterback Brandon Allen goes 6 completions and 21 attempts for 48 yards. Jesus Christ! Like, what is that? We should be talking about that more than bloody Nate Sudfeld at quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
That was one of my notes. It was one of my notes. The Bengals got 3 points, and no one cared about that.
Jesus Christ! Zach Taylor obviously since been confirmed that he'll be coming back. But Baltimore, like Sean mentioned, running up a bit of steam since their COVID issues. Can't stop winning. Can't stop running the ball and just smashing it down people's throats. Obviously, you played Titans next week, which obviously was a repeat from last year. We all know how that went. So maybe I think we've got a sandwich bet, haven't we, Lawrence, on Lamar Jackson winning a playoff game this season? So that'd be interesting. There's a sandwich on that game.
I thought it was reaching the playoffs.
No, we had 2. You won the first one, so I'm winning. I need Lamar Jackson to.
It was the Browns-Ravens game, and reaching the playoffs. So we got a third one about winning the playoff game now.
Yeah. I said if he wins, if he gets to the playoffs, if he wins the game, but hopefully Lamar Jackson continues his choking like Tim Henman in the second week of Wimbledon. But we'll wait and see. Be interesting to see if obviously with the hot streak. I mentioned the hot streak. Obviously, can it be of similar ilk to Joe Flacco's hot streak back in Super Bowl, led all the way to 47 against San Francisco 49ers. I know probably the polar opposites of what a quarterback is. One just chucks for pass interference calls, and one actually can runs the ball as a runner. But Ravens are in as well. There'll be that's one of the games of the AFC. I think I'm probably looking forward to the most. Ravens Titans be a lot of points.
Yeah. No, there definitely will be, mate. And we did the same for the NFC, so let's quickly go and just confirm the AFC. The stadiums are going across the bottom of the screen there. Obviously, the Chiefs secured the bye last weekend, so obviously it will run through Arrowhead. But we've got Buffalo as the 2, Pittsburgh the 3, Tennessee the 4, Baltimore the 5, Cleveland the 6, Indianapolis the 7. I think the AFC, top to bottom, is excellent in terms of the strength in numbers. But Lawrence said the same thing for the NFC. Who have you got in terms of the AFC? Who's coming out of it?
I'm sticking with the team that I said before the start of the season. I'm staying with the Ravens, baby.
And Steve?
The Bills.
Tim?
I've got a funny feeling about the Bills, but I'm going to stick to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I've said the Chiefs all season long, and I see no reason to change it, apart from the fact that our good old friend Ross Sterling thinks the Browns are going to beat the Steelers and then travel to Arrowhead. If that's the case, then obviously the Browns will be going to the Super Bowl, fellas, but we shall wait and see. It's all good fun. But I mentioned earlier that we are going to have another competition forthcoming. Tim did just flash it up on the screen a moment ago. If he wants to flash it back up there, my friend. In terms of the pick'ems, obviously a little bit different week to week now, but obviously we have the road to the Super Bowl mapped out. We know that it will go through Arrowhead and it will go through Lambeau. And what we want you to do, quite simply, is give us your path to the Super Bowl. Plot who you think is going to play who throughout the course of the playoff run, and if anyone gets it bang on, we'll be giving away some more merchandise. Obviously, we've got to figure out exactly what we're going to do if someone gets it close, but not quite right. But we'll cross that bridge as and when we get there. Hopefully, somebody will figure it out. So Obviously, KC and Green Bay will play the lowest remaining seeds at the end of the wildcard weekend. And obviously, you can plot it all the way to the final. Obviously, we need your entries in before the games kick off on Saturday. And we'll release details of how to get those across to us in due course. So keep your eyes and your ears peeled for information on how to get involved. We enjoy doing these competitions, so get involved and play alongside. We'll certainly be having a go ourselves, won't we, fellas? Let's round off week 17 then, fellas, and indeed let's round off the season with one final blast of statistics. So as we are at season end, let's do one for the week and one for the season, if we can manage that, fellas. I know it's probably asking a lot, but we'll see what we've got. And Steve, as our newbie, I will give you the choice. Would you like to go first or last, my friend?
I'll go first.
Go on.
Week 17 is sort of weekend season. It's you sort of encapsulate the whole lot. But mine for, I guess, the week, sort of, I might be cheating a bit here, is Tom Brady has joined Peyton Manning as the only players in NFL history with 40-plus pass touchdowns in a single season with multiple teams. 2020 is Brady's second season with 40-plus pass touchdowns, tied second most in such seasons in NFL history. Only Aaron Rodgers has more seasons with 40-plus pass touchdowns.
Nice one, mate. Nice one. Yeah, as we said earlier, if you needed some statistical evidence to back up our commentary, there you go. Another phenomenal season from Tom Brady, showing no signs of slowing down. Lawrence, let's come to you, my friend.
Teased it earlier. I'm going down the John Wolford Road.
That's a road that nobody has travelled before.
No one's travelled down. It's a dark road. It's filled with snow.
Sean McWay.
And danger, yeah. This will officially blow your mind. John Wolford, in his debut for the Rams, became the first quarterback in NFL history to pass for over 200 yards and rush for over 50 in his debut game. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Jesus.
But it gets
not
better.
Even that much.
It gets better. He's also the first quarterback in NFL history to make his debut in the final week of a regular season with his team actively battling for a playoff performance. And to top it off, I'm on a Wolford tip here. His 56 yards rushing are the most by a Rams quarterback since Roman Gabriel had 57 back in 1967. And one final bonus Wolford here. This is unbelievable. If I don't win, I tell you what, I'm walking out. I'm quitting. And if you think Wolford is a name that kind of rings some sort of distant bell, which it did with me, and I was like, who is this? His uncle is Will Wolford, who was an offensive guard drafted in the first round by the Buffalo Bills in 1986. Will Wolford ended up playing in 3 consecutive Super Bowls for the Bills in 3 consecutive losses to different NFC East teams. Top that.
He's brought his A game for the finale. He really has brought his A game for the finale. Come on then, Tim. There's a bar that you've got to try and keep.
Yeah, I'm not getting under that. I need a pole vault for that one. I found it actually quite hard to find some Week 17 ones. I thought might be like one with the Isaiah McKenzie's or this, but it's actually a record that stays intact. So Patrick Mahomes obviously sat in Week 17, which allowed Deshaun Watson to lead the NFL in passing yards. So that means that Johnny Unitas will still remain the last QB to lead the NFL in passing yards and win the championship in the same season. And that was all the way back in 1959.
Oh, impressive, mate. Impressive.
Yeah, I must have thought someone that has the most passing yards.
69.
Nice, yeah. Well, I've got 59 from the tweet I got it from, but so yeah, it might be. Yeah, I don't know if it's 69, maybe. I don't know. I just thought it's quite interesting that the amount of passing yards, obviously, are going to be the high end quarterbacks. It's surprising how many haven't had the most passing yards and then gone on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Like you say, certainly would have thought that somebody would have done it, but there you go. One of those statistical anomalies. Any more, fellas? Anyone got any more?
Got a season one.
I've
Look,
got season one, yeah.
I've got season one.
Go on then, fellas. Let's go around one more time. Go on then, Steve.
Okay, so if the Chiefs win their divisional game, they'll become the first team in history to host 3 straight AFC championship games. The only team to ever do it in the NFC was the 2002 to 2004 Philadelphia Eagles. And guess who is the head coach of both? Andy Reid.
There you go.
There you go.
The old walrus. Fair play, mate. Fair play.
It's Hawaiian shirts. Get me on those Hawaiian shirts.
Lawrence?
Well, you stole my thunder a little bit, but I'll just give it a little bit of context. I can't sign the season off without talking about my husband, Lamar Jackson, who, incidentally, just to remind everybody out there, is still only 23 years old. Obviously, became the first quarterback to ever rush for back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons in 1,206 in 2019 and 7 touchdowns, and then 1,005 and another 7 touchdowns this season. Interestingly, he performed both 1,000-yard seasons on only 15 games. He was out. For COVID earlier on this season, so didn't play a full slate. Having rushed for 3 yards against the Bengals back in October, he got 97 on Sunday to finish with exactly 100 against the Bengals this season. And as we know, first team to have over 400 yards rushing in a game since 2000. And it was the Bengals, ironically, were the last team to run over 400 yards in a game. And Sean, this is a special one just for you around Lamar Jackson, just because you still don't respect him as an NFL passer. I'll just drop this little microphone drop at the end here. Lamar Jackson now has 46 touchdown passes in the red zone. And how many interceptions? 0. 46 red zone touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And he's not a passer.
Hey, Lawrence, I've got to be honest. I still saw how wide open Des Bryant was last week. I could have thrown that without getting it intercepted. So come on. Now, credit where it's due. Like I said earlier, mate, they are the team that are on form. I think they're the team that everybody didn't want in the playoffs, and obviously they've managed to force their way in. They are going to be a serious force to be reckoned with. And all joking aside, Lamar's got to get that monkey off his back. He's got to go out and win a game this weekend. If I'm the Titans, he's doing everything to make him beat you through the air. Simple as that. And if he does, fair play to him. He'll certainly shut me up. Tim, finish us off for the season then, mate, with one final statistic.
Oh yeah, just a point on that. Lamar Jackson might be 23, Lawrence, but don't forget running backs have a shorter shelf life in the NFL. Anyway, moving on. So here's my one, my season stat. So Aaron Rodgers has had more touchdown passes, 48, than Packers have punted this season, 46.
That's wonderful.
That is incredible. I love that stat. I mean, I've got to give Lawrence the win for the passion he brought for Mr. Wolford, but that is a stat and a half, isn't it? 48 touchdowns to 46 punts. That is absolutely phenomenal stuff.
To do it for absolutely phenomenal. Is mental.
Oh, crazy. Absolutely crazy. One from me, just as a bonus one to finish off, just because it's AFC North related. The AFC North is the first NFL division since the 2002 realignment to have 3 teams with 11 or more wins. So I don't know if that tells you that the AFC North was pretty good this year, or that just confirms that the NFC East, certainly in the first half of the season, was absolute dross. But there you go. You can make up your own minds on that one, ladies and gents. Right, fellas. Obviously, the day after the regular season finishes, plenty of coaches and GM firing news to go through. So obviously, a lot of this was actually done earlier on in the season. So it's been a little bit quiet today, really. You know, it's normally a steady stream of news coming out throughout the course of the day. But obviously, there are some that we've talked about. In terms of John Elway, relieved of his general manager duties today. Obviously, the news of Anthony Lynn that was mentioned earlier, despite a 4-game win streak to end the season. But as things stand, we have head coach openings at the Falcons, at the Lions, at the Texans, at the Jets, and we have and the Chargers, and then general manager vacancies at the Falcons, the Panthers, the Lions, the Texans, the Jags. I think I mentioned that the Jags have obviously parted with Doug Marrone as well. So there's usually 6 or 7. We've pretty much got around about where we are. We've probably got more time to react to. We may well get some written article review over it. I certainly know that a couple of the lads are doing a few written takeaways on it tomorrow. But just some quick reaction. Any surprises? Any surprises in terms of people that are staying? I mean, we mentioned Zach Taylor from the Bengals. I think he's quite fortunate, if I'm being completely honest, to be sticking around. So, Steve, any sort of surprises for you, either in terms of people that have gone or people that subsequently have held on to jobs?
I think with Zach Taylor, you've got to look at the lack of protection that ultimately led to Joe Burrow's unfortunate injury. I'm not surprised they give him one more. Give him one more with Joe Burrow. See if they draft. They'll probably take Sewell with the pick if he's not already gone. So give him some protection. That doesn't surprise me. No, I think most of them were sort of expected. Some of them were like the Jets. Firing Gase was coming. They just wanted to wait until it was confirmed that the season was done and they had the pick they wanted. Same with Doug Marrone. I've read that there's quite a lot of respect between Shad Khan and Doug Marrone, and that he wanted to sort of do it amicably and didn't want to sort of leave him out in the middle of the season. But that's a hell of a GM opening in Jacksonville with the cap space that they've got, the first round picks they've got, and the young talent. That's the youngest roster in the NFL. So that's a hell of an opening. I think there's more to come. I'd be surprised if Dave Gettleman stays. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants finally get rid of him. There'll be others, sort of DCs and OCs around the league, I'm sure, that'll go. Tim's very own Cowboys, what do they do with Mike McCarthy? Would he go? I don't think so, but you never know. You just never know.
Yeah. No, I just from a Dallas standpoint, people keep asking me whether or not he should go. I'm a bit Natalie Imbruglia. I'm a bit torn, but I'm hearing I'm hearing whispers that particularly if he does go, it's because they want to give it to Kellen Moore. I would probably be for that, but I think they'll give McCarthy another season. It's not his fault that Dak Prescott got injured. I know the defense was notoriously bad at the start of the season, obviously under his tenure, and it's not obviously gone great. But I would be surprised if they parted from Mike McCarthy. I think he'll be there next year.
And Lawrence, just your reaction to the sort of Black Monday news as we've had it so far?
I guess my only surprise was Anthony Lynn, because I think he's without a lot of pieces on the team. It's not the most talented roster. If you look at it overall, they've got a lot of things that they need to build, and I thought they would have built with Anthony Lynn in charge of it. So that's a little bit of a shocker because it sets people back. Justin Herbert's obviously going to be under a new head coach in his second year, so it's kind of starting again. And you look at those quarterbacks that are projected to do really well, and if you keep changing staff in front of them, their development, I think, gets a bit stunted. So that was a little surprise to me. And then on the more sort of positive front around making sure we're getting more black head coaches out there. I hope Eric Bieniemy does get a head coaching job very soon. He's absolutely worthy of one, and I look forward to him roaming the sidelines for somebody else other than Kansas City in 2021. So good luck to Eric Bieniemy. I know he's talking to the Jets on Zoom. I think it is either tonight or tomorrow. So let's see kind of where that goes, because I know that's kind of it's a little bit of an elephant in the room about minority coaches. So we've got to be mindful of this situation, and let's hope that that regardless of who is out there, that anyone who is hired is interviewed and they get the job based on their talents and their experience and not their skin color.
No, absolutely, mate. I think Bieniemy was certainly a hot name last year. For whatever reason, it didn't just quite work out. He certainly did the round in terms of interviews, didn't he? I think this will be the off season that he does eventually move on. I know you said he's talking to the Jets. I really hope for him that he doesn't end up at the Jets. I want to see him at the Chargers with Herbert, or I want to see him at the Texans with Deshaun Watson, and they give him a quarterback, and then it could be interesting with that Texans opening. Good Lord, good luck whoever's taking that on. Already over the cap, which is expected to be reduced further because of the pandemic. No first-round pick, no second-round pick, just one pick in the third round, and then 5 picks scattered amongst the latter rounds. That is going to be one hell of a job. John Dorsey's a name that I've heard mentioned to that GM opening. That will be interesting. A man that's known to not have too much of a concern for blowing cap space, to not give him any to start with, could be very interesting. So we shall see how that plays out, I suppose, over the course of the coming weeks. Right, fellas. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. We've gone through a lot of games, as obviously all 32 teams involved for one final weekend. But as we've alluded to over a few of the sections tonight, we will be back later on in the week as the podcast moves to twice a week. We'll be on Mondays and Thursdays, still working through some of the finer details in terms of the cast and crew and how it's going to be brought to you, etc., etc. But there will certainly be a full 10 yards presence on your screens and on the airwaves on Thursday evening to look at wildcard weekend and look at that for a slate of games. We've got Saturday, Colts at Bills, Rams at Seahawks, the Bucks and the Washington football team. And then, obviously, once you've had a few hours kip, get back up ready for Sunday. And we've got Ravens, Titans, Bears and Saints, and of course, rounding out the week with the Browns and the Steelers. I've waited 18 years for a playoff game, and they give me 1:15 a.m. on Monday morning. Thank you very much indeed, NFL. You could have given me any other slot, and you give me the 1:15 a.m. game, but never mind. I am certainly not complaining, really. Certainly not at all. You'll get a double dose of me and Tim on Thursday, as we will be back for the final edition of this season's Full 10 Questions, Full 10 Yard Staff Edition. So Lawrence and Steve may well be participating in that one. That will be on from 8 o'clock, and then we will be back at 9 with the preview podcast. So you can't get enough of me and Mr. Monk this week, that's for sure. We will do our best to get you all set for playoff weekend. Pleasure as always, fellas. As I always do, give you a final chance just to close with any words of wisdom. So, Tim, let's start with yourself, mate.
Yeah, I want to dedicate the podcast to Matt Sharp, who's retired today. He's somehow managed to earn north of 90 million in career earnings. So fair play to you, Matt Sharp. Go and stick your feet up, mate. You've had plenty of practice.
Indeed.
£90 million.
90 million for Matt Sharp. There's hope for us all, fellas. There's hope for us all. Lawrence, anything from you, buddy?
I just think I want to congratulate all three of you. And sorry, you can boo at me now. We managed to go through the entire pod without talking about going into a national lockdown. So, I just think that was a terrific job by everybody. So, I think it's very important that we all have a distraction at the moment, whilst we continue to fight COVID-19 around the world. So, everything that we're doing as part of the Full 10 Yard family, I think is brilliant. And so everyone who's involved, including everyone who's listening and watching, I want to thank you for what you're doing, because it makes it all worthwhile, and it's the best distraction on the earth.
Come here to talk about David Johnson's to get away from your Boris Johnsons.
Nicely done, my friend. Nicely done. And Steve, I've got to say, mate, an impressive debut. Very well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me on, gents. A little bit nervous at first, but yeah, we got there in the end. I managed to go an hour and 22 minutes without getting too wax lyrical about the Eagles, which is always an achievement for me.
Turn that shit off.
Yeah. No, it's been fun. It's weird. It's weird to sort of go into January and the Eagles not be there. They've been there the last 3 years, so it's going to be weird. But it's also good to have some new teams in there. And the Browns being there, a good friend of mine is also a big Browns fan, and it's the longest active playoff streak snapped. So was it 17 years? I think it was. It's now that the Jets now hold the longest 10 years. So. Yeah, it's the longest one snapped. So it's good to see some new teams there. It's going to be a really exciting super wild card weekend. Don't forget, it's super. we have to call it super because there's an extra game on each day. So the super wildcard weekend next weekend has got some really tasty matchups. It's a shame that the Browns are playing the Steelers. They've got a divisional game, which is a shame. But it's good to see some new teams there, and hopefully we're in for another barnstorm in January.
I'm sure we will be, mate. I'm sure we will be. Of course, keep your eyes peeled as well for the Saints and the Bears game. They have the privilege of being the Nickelodeon broadcast. So if you like a bit of Gunge in your end zone and SpongeBob SquarePants and all the rest of it, then Bears and Saints, they get the honour of the Nickelodeon game. So that will be fun to watch nonetheless. I'm going to close, fellas, and I'm going to raise a glass to the good old Cleveland Browns. 18 years of hurt, finally done. Up the Browns, go Browns, and we will be back on Thursday. Thanks ever so much for everybody listening, watching, interacting. We love doing what we do. All joking aside, as Lauren said, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves. We'll be back talking more football later in the week. Until then, in the great words of Mr. Kevin Cadle, it's bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.
For listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Full 10 Yards, or email the show full10yards@gmail.com.